Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 3-0 Take, where we talk all things Major League Baseball. Here's Kyle Corbin and Nate Rhys. It all starts right now.
Welcome back to the 3-0 Take, presented by SeatGeek. This is episode 420. I'll be your host, Kyle Corbin, and that's all you're getting. Because my good friend, my co-host, my partner, my buddy, Nate Rhys, got hitched last night, Saturday night. Shout out to him and Paige. Wish them nothing but the best. But obviously, as Nate had alluded to in the days leading up to it, he was going to be a little busy with the planning and getting the details and everything figured out. So I figured with opening weekend wrapping up, I figured what better time than to drop a solo pod because we can't even really do it tomorrow night because I think Nate has made it a plan to go to the Yankees game. I believe they're in Arizona next. So again, riding solo tonight. You got yours truly, Kyle, wrapping up the reaction to MLB opening weekend. So bear with me. There's a lot to get into. I can just go ahead and promise you right now, I'm not going to get to all of it. There was so much to get into or to talk about, to cover, but it's essentially Major League Baseball's opening weekend is essentially like drinking from a fire hose because you have storylines, one that were building up before the season started, and then you have storylines that are developing as the season goes on, as we're 3, 4, 5 games into the season. So we're going to get into what I hope are the main storylines here. But again, bear with me. I apologize in advance. I may not get to everything that you're hoping that I get to, but I think I'll have the major bases covered. So starting us off here, let's just have a little tip of the cap to some teams that had some notable starts. Well, I say tip of the cap. Some of these teams certainly undeserving of a tip of the cap. But right off the top, let's show some love to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Starting off 4-0. We're definitely going to get into some Pirates talk. Marlins 0-4 at the hands of the Pirates. Yankees, how about the Bronx Bombers 4-0? The Dogs, as Alex Verdugo maybe began the label of after the sweep. Astros 0-4 at the hands of the Yankees. Tigers, a sleeper pick in the Central that I think a lot of people, or maybe not a lot of people, but a handful of folks maybe had as that surprise team coming out of the Central, whereas myself, some others maybe had the Royals in the mix later down the road. Tigers starting off strong, good for them. White Sox 0-3. Brewers, we're certainly going to get into that. A little bit of a fiasco with the Mets. Brewers starting 3-0, Mets 0-3. But also wanted to show some love to some teams like the Padres, the D-backs, the Braves, and even others putting up big crooked numbers offensively over the weekend. You had the Reds have a walk-off. You got Fernando Tatis, Teoscar Hernandez. Everybody, there was some firepower this weekend. So just wanted to, again, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the weekend, just wanted to give some love to some of those teams and players. But getting into it, I already mentioned it. I think this is probably the biggest, or one of the biggest, if not the biggest takeaways, storylines from the weekend, the Mets-Brewers beef. I'll go ahead and say right now that I did not have this, dare we call it, rivalry brewing, pun intended. Look, the Mets, if you followed this podcast for any length of time, or just Nate and I in general for any length of time, you know how we feel about the Mets. and even really the Brewers. So honestly, when this happened, I was a little torn. I didn't really know which team to side with because I'm not the biggest Brewers guy. Haven't been for a while. Certainly not a big Mets guy. I tweeted out this weekend that the Mets, following the fiasco, actually following the intentional pitch behind, which I'll touch on, I just tweeted out, simply put, that the Mets are the most pathetic franchise in baseball. And I believed that before the season even started. And then all of this went down. Talk about doubling down on that take. The Mets are the most pathetic franchise in baseball. And I'll stand by. That's a hill that I will die on without a problem, without an issue. So if you live under a rock, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown as to what happened. So there was a play up the middle where Rhys Hoskins is coming in as the base runner. Jeff McNeil prepared to receive, make the transition, make the throw, turn two, receives a throw, goes to make the throw. Rhys Hoskins comes in with a late slide. Look, there's been a lot of takes flying around, and mine is just going to be another one that's in that mix of takes flying around. Who's what weight do my takes hold? But hopefully you're here listening, so I appreciate you if you are interested and take value in the takes that we share on here. But with that said, I'll just say that, and look, I'm only 30 years old. I'm not going to sit here and drop the whole back in my day thing. But it wasn't even that long ago to where this was a very normal, widely accepted slide. You are taught and this isn't like, there's probably people listening going, well, what would you know? Did you play professional baseball? No, I didn't. I'll be the first to tell you, I played Division III college baseball. I was proud of it, but who am I to say one way or the other? All I'm telling you, from my experience, from what I know, and from following the game for as long as I have, guys are taught to slide late. Why, you ask? To break up the throw, which is exactly what happened here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you or convince you out of believing that maybe a new reinforcement of base running rules or sliding rules. I don't know where Major League Baseball stands on that at this particular point in time. I know we've had some issues. Dustin Pedroia, Chase Utley involved in separate incidents over years past. But looking at the video from this play, I just have a hard time getting upset with Rhys about this. And I know immediately when it happened, you've got Jeff McNeil just in his face, letting him know. And look, I talk all the time about, like, if you're going to talk about it, be about it. It wasn't the best look, if we're being honest, for Rhys Hoskins to get up, immediately make his way over to the dugout. He begins to be held back once he starts getting fired up a little bit. And then from behind the railing, if I recall correctly, it was behind the railing of the top step of the dugout is when he starts the whole crying gesture to Jeff McNeil. I get it. Jeff McNeil seemed to be a little hot about this. And I understand guys' careers have been ruined over stuff like this. So I understand where the frustration comes from, the heat of the moment. But just a weird situation where he comes in late. Again, I thought it wasn't the cleanest slide, but to me, it was a hard play. It was a hard attempt to break up a play up the middle. Jeff McNeil took exception to that. And apparently so did Yohan Ramirez, who later, was it today? Was it later in the game? Again, drinking from a fire hose this opening weekend. There's a lot that gets lost in the mix. Either way, after the fact, Yohan Ramirez throws behind Rhys Hoskins, which was such a loser move to sit. And I know they all come out and say, well, there was no intention behind it. And then you got the manager coming out and saying, no, I'm backing my guy. There was no There was no intent behind it. It was clear as day. You're going to throw at it. It wasn't really at his head. It was more behind the neck, behind the numbers, behind the nameplate, that general vicinity. But very, very clearly intentional. Did it happen to anybody else in the lineup in that specific way? No. Rhys Hoskins has a reason to be upset. If he thinks his slide was a clean slide, a hard play, an aggressive play, he has every reason to be upset. And look, guy, I think Carabas tweeted it. He said, Rhys Hoskins has played his entire career in Philly. Your boos do nothing but fuel him. And sure enough, guy goes off. He's got a 2-run single, a 2-run bomb. He had an answer for this whole incident. And quite frankly, the Mets come out of this situation looking like absolute losers. You get swept. I don't know if the decision has been made yet. I don't know if that has to wait till Monday on the suspension. I don't know if we've heard back on that. But chances are that that'll probably remain. It maybe it'll probably get dropped a game, if anything. But just a rough look for the Mets to start the season. Not to mention you got the dance team coming out. They're on top of the dugout. Mets are getting the freaking break speed off them. They're out there doing Gangnam Style and just breaking it down for a couple of Mets breakdowns, if you will. And then you got Pete Alonso, which look, I don't have a problem with Pete Alonso showing up to a country concert and getting up on stage and having a grand old time. I've said before, we treat these guys as if they're not human beings. Like, these guys are entitled to a life outside of the lines, off the diamond. So look, I don't have a problem with Pete Alonso going to a country concert. I just think context matters. And if you've got Pete Alonso going to a country concert in the midst of a sweep to start the season, not the greatest look in my opinion. So all that to say, I just think it was such a loser weekend. I'll just leave it at that. A loser weekend for the Mets. And again, not a big Brewers guy. I'm not going to necessarily come out as this big Rhys Hoskins homer, but if we're talking about maybe picking a side for this little incident, I'm probably going to side with Rhys Hoskins because, again, while it was a hard slide, I think it was a clean slide. You're taught, again, to slide late, to break up the throw, and that's what he did. So I'll leave it at that. Talking about moving along here, talking about altercation, more so, more unnecessary, in my opinion, than even the Mets Brewers one, was this Blue Jays Rays benches clearing brawl. It wasn't even really a brawl. It was a benches clearing get together over there at third base. For those who didn't see it, for those who either don't follow these teams or just didn't catch it, Blue Jay. I want to make sure I get these individuals who were involved right. You had Henderson Cabrera and Jose Caballero from the Rays. Basically, what happened is you had. Honestly, I may need to pull up the play just as a refresher. But if I recall, Caballero was coming into third. Let me see here. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it was a little bunt down the third base line. Ball is thrown to first, runs down the foul line there, gets by the first baseman. He makes his way around second, coming into third, hosed by a mile. Bichette is there at third to tag him out, and then bumps into Cabrera. And honestly, that's where it should have stopped, right then and there. You bump into, hey, my bad. I maybe should have been a little step back. And maybe these things were said initially. Maybe there was some miscommunication. Maybe didn't quite relay the sentiment of apology or whatever it was right there in the moment. And Caballero just take exception to the whole thing and is like, all right, dude, if you want to throw down, let's throw down. And then you got Cabrera throwing quite literally throwing hands. And if you've seen the slow-mo video of it, I tweeted out, I said I shouldn't be laughing as hard as I am, but I gotta admit it was pretty comical. The way his face was just like contorted. It was a scene, but just completely unnecessary. And I tweeted it out. I was like, why is everybody so just like on edge 3 games into the season? And I want to make sure I want to give credit where credit's due. Chris Madison on Twitter replied to my tweet, which again, my tweet, I said, why are players so sensitive 3 days into the season? And I tweeted the video of the slow-mo hands to the face, which again, just you need to pull it up if you haven't seen it. Chris Madison says they're taking their anger out on each other. The uniforms, Rob Manfred sucks. The new rules suck, like obstruction of the bag at second base, so on and so forth. Look, I hadn't considered that point until he tweeted it out. It's a very valid point. I'd probably be upset too if I was up against all of these things, the uniforms, which let's pause here and address that nonsense. The series that I had my eye on, partially because it was the series that opened the season, was the Orioles and Angels. So it was the first instance of me seeing this. The Angels road uniforms are awful. Like, forget the nameplates on the back. The two-tone gray road uniforms, and I believe it's elsewhere around the league with some of these other road teams that we've seen. And I'm sure as teams start hitting the road, or maybe who are home, we're going to see more examples of this. Not a good look, dude. What are we doing? Major League Baseball, Fanatics, Nike. It's beyond complaining about now. It's more of a general question. Honestly, right? I'm sitting right here as a baseball fan. I'm looking at Nike, Major League Baseball, Fanatics, and I'm genuinely asking, do you see the same uniforms that we're seeing? I really want to know. Are you seeing the same things that we're seeing? Like, and if you are, you're telling me you're okay with this. You're okay with this. Because that's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I couldn't do a job to where, I mean, I'm not trying to sit here and say I would like shortchange any other job that I do, but especially one where the product that you put forth is witnessed on such a national, just generally large scale, the way the Major League Baseball product is viewed and seen. I would not put a product out there that's this bad. And again, we don't need to rehash the name, but the size of the names, those are awful. We don't need to rehash the placement of patches and stitching and all of this. I just don't think I realized how bad the whole two-tone gray is. They don't match. They're not the same color. And I don't think we had really dove into that in spring training because it wasn't as blatantly, like it just wasn't as transparent as we're seeing it now, because I mean, everybody's watching these games now. Not everybody necessarily is watching spring training games, so maybe it flew a little bit under the radar if that was a problem that existed then. But just wanted to address that. And not to mention the sweat. Oh my goodness. I don't think we realized that was that bad either. You want to talk about look at the Yankees, for example, down in Houston, and we're talking like low to mid 70s for those games. We haven't even reached May. We haven't even reached June. Forget August. We haven't even reached the heat, the true heat of the summer. And these guys look like wet napkins out there. These uniforms look like wet napkins. What are we doing? Fix your product. That's all I'll say on that. But back to this. What were we talking about? A little scuffle here. Yeah, just generally, both of these I think could have been avoided. They were unnecessary. Again, that's what my thought was. That's how we transitioned. I don't know why everybody around the league right now is so uptight. Like, let's relax. Okay, let's relax. It's not that serious. We're 3 games into well, I guess technically the Dodgers are like, what, 5, 6 games in. But generally speaking, we're like 3, 4 games into the season. Everybody just needs to chill. Like, this is the time of the year where you're supposed to be. Look, I'm not here for like being all buddy out on the field, but like, if you are going to be all buddy out on the field with some teammates or some players of the opposing team, now's the time to do it. Like, hey man, how was your spring? As you well know, we were out in Arizona, you were in Florida. How was it out there? Let's catch up a little bit while we're in between pitches. That's when you do it. But we're taking our downtime in between pitches, in between outs to bust out the boxing gloves. I don't understand. It's too early for this, okay? I'm all for like brewing up some rivalries a little bit, maybe some under the radar rivalries, but let's pump the brakes a little bit, shall we? Just a little bit. Orioles. Let's talk some Orioles here real quick. I know I already mentioned them. It was the series that, as I said, that opened up the Major League season on opening day. That is obviously not Dodgers, Padres, and Korea. But with that said, this was the first series that I was locked into on opening day. I think it had like a 4 p.m. 4 p.m. start, 3 p.m. start, which another thing. I thought it was odd that there was no 1 p.m. games. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's pretty normal, pretty standard, little 1 o'clock action on opening day. I mean, if we're trying to make a push for it to be a national holiday, I'm going to need it to start earlier in the day and not like basically after the workday's just about over / coming to a close. Going to need it to start a little bit earlier. So maybe give me a little something earlier in the afternoon so I can really enjoy the day as it should be enjoyed. But with that said, right off the top, man, Mike Trout, talk about, I don't want to say a comeback season, maybe a little bit of a revenge season. I think that's something that we touched on in previous episodes this spring before the season started, talking about how this might be the year, or a year, I should say. We've seen magical seasons from Mike Trout in years past, obviously, but I think this might be a year that you see, independent of how the Angels do. This has nothing to do with how the Angels do. Purely talking Mike Trout here, where you see him remind people who he is and what kind of player he is. Because I think he and Ohtani at the end of the day, they were good buddies out there in Anaheim, but I think he maybe, if he's being honest, if you had a chat with him behind closed doors, he maybe got a little fed up with like the, hey, you're just going to toss me aside like a rag doll once Ohtani walks through the door. And like, understandably so, Ohtani is Ohtani. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But Mike Trout's going, what happened to the whole best player in the game narrative? You can't, I mean, certainly if Ohtani is better than me, that still keeps me in the conversation, but it's almost as if people have completely just disregarded what I bring to the table. And granted, I understand he's had some issues with injuries and all that, but I mean, Mike Trout had to probably feel a little bit slighted. So for him to come out right out of the gate, solo bomb, I believe it was solo bomb to get things going for his 2024 season. I loved that, dude. I loved that. Look, I'll say at the end of the day, I'm a huge Mike Trout guy. I know I've waned a little bit in years past because I get tired of the injury bug always sneaking up. Some of it more on him, some of it just bad luck. I understand that, but I'm never going to root against Mike Trout, I guess is the best way to put it. And so again, for him to come out and start the way he did was awesome. But more importantly, I think Corbin Burnes making his debut for the Orioles, went 11 had 11 strikeouts over 6 innings. O's put up an 11-3 win, another big crooked number to get things started. He retired 18 of the 19 guys he faced, which again, The only real ding against his outing was the Mike Trout home run, but otherwise brilliant. So you love to see a guy like Corbin Burnes get settled in right away. O's fans, I think I mentioned it last episode. I feel like I'm with Ryan Ripken and some of his buddies that I'm getting more engaged with in terms of content. I see more Orioles content now than I think I do of any other team. And so I'm getting a really good feel. I'm getting a really good pulse of how excited Orioles fans are about this season. Not that I needed to see a bunch of that to know that. You could just assume that was the case. But seeing Corbin Burnes go off, seeing Grayson Rodriguez have an outing, Gunnar Henderson. I mean, Gunnar Henderson finished a double short of the cycle on, was it Saturday? I mean, just all things moving in the Orioles direction. Yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing in Baltimore. I mean, as a fan of another team in the AL East, I don't love it in that regard, but I think we can look at the Orioles as a team maybe in their own world right now, in their own at their own level, in their own tier, that we can, as baseball fans, just appreciate and enjoy. But I don't think, speaking of enjoying, I don't think O's fans are enjoying seeing Jackson Holliday start in AAA, going deep, his first AB in AAA, or this season rather, off a lefty. Like the whole hang up, and I think we mentioned it. The hang up with, or the supposed, I'll say, hang up with the front office was that, well, he needed to season himself a little bit more against some skilled lefties, to get some more reps in, seeing the ball coming in from that side of the plate. And like, I'm surprised, but I'm also at the same time not surprised. The first at bat of the season for Jackson Holliday, just a moonshot to right center off a lefty. So I think you're going to start hearing even more noise about Jackson Holliday needing to be in the big league lineup soon. Keeping it in the American League East, the Yankees. Oh man, I know Nate he's probably chomping at the bit to talk about this New York Yankees team. And look, I'll be the hand up first to acknowledge New York Yankees have a weekend. Have a weekend, minus the sweaty uniforms, the wet napkins that you're wearing, which again, not your fault. Just have a weekend. And Juan Soto, my good. Actually, let's just, before we get into the Juan Soto talk, let's tip our cap to Oswaldo Cabrera. How about that, man? I'm seeing Yankee fans who were anti-Oswaldo Cabrera, or maybe even on the fence in regards to Oswaldo Cabrera. They're saying, no, you have to keep him in the lineup until he cools off. That's just how the game works. And I'm seeing comments like that. I'm going, if the guys that they're on the fence about are starting off this well, like, you don't even need to talk about guys like Juan Soto, who you know are just going to see the ball, hit the ball, and take care of their business. So they're clicking on all cylinders right now, at least 4 games through the season. But Juan Soto, RBI single in the 9th is today is what gave them the 4-game sweep over Houston in Houston, which I tweeted out as well. Juan Soto owns Houston. Like, forget whether it's Yankees, Nationals, Minute Maid. That's Juan Soto's home right there, Minute Maid Park. And he was putting balls into the seats off, what was it, Justin Verlander when he was 20 years old. And now he's putting up the Yankees ahead in Houston. I mean, I'm glad to see it, man. I mean, he hit 529 this series, 9 for 17. He had 4 ribbies. Yankees are now 4-0 to start the season its first 4-0 start since 2003 and just its fourth since 1950. But on that note, I will say regarding Juan Soto, look, I'm seeing a lot of comments from Yankee fans saying they're tweeting out, "Hey, how much are we going to give this guy and for how long?" Look, I love that you all love your new shiny toy, but just stand by. If this is the Juan Soto, and you want to talk about consistency, this guy is consistent. If he is consistent in the regards to his month by month splits, Yankee fans, I will warn you, stand by for the month of April. You look at his splits, April is by far statistically his worst month, as is for a number of guys around the league. Some guys are ready to go at opening day. Some guys need that first month to get warmed up. But I know specifically this dip that he takes right away, right off the top in April, from a fantasy baseball perspective, because I've had him in fantasy before, and a guy like Juan Soto is hard to flip if you're trying to maybe get a package in return, but people are looking at his April numbers going, whoa, what's the deal here? But as consistency would have it, Juan Soto is going to turn it around. But I'm just saying, from an outsider's perspective, Yankees fans, I will warn you to just prepare for the April dip. It's coming. He's gonna get on base. That's not the issue, but he's not gonna have the power numbers necessarily. The OPS plus isn't gonna look as shiny mid to late April as maybe it does 4 games into the season. And I know it's hard to maintain the rate he's hitting at right now, but let's just prepare yourselves. It's coming. But who knows? Maybe, new team. Maybe we've mentioned it here the past week or two. Nobody seems to have been a better fit for a Yankees uniform than Juan Soto. Maybe this guy was born to be a Yankee. Maybe the outcome for his month of April in 2024 is different than the rest of his career. But again, if we're talking consistency, which this guy is, then I'll say it again. Just prepare yourselves. Pirates. Let's transition to some Pirates talk. The Bucks 4-0. How about it? There's a 4-game road sweep of don't forget, a 2023 playoff team in the Miami Marlins. So this isn't anything to turn your nose up at, baseball fans, anti-Pirates fans. Yours truly, I got the receipts. You can go back and look at the Hot Takes and Predictions episode. I was talking high on the Pirates. Nate wasn't necessarily. I don't think Ryan was necessarily. Ryan, sorry if you were. I was talking up on the Pirates, and I'm not going to sit here and say that a 4-game road series, or a road sweep rather, is an indication of a World Series team, but it's a heck of a good start. If you remember last year, they started 20-8. So who knows? Maybe they replicate something along those lines, but maybe this year they take it a little bit further, because if you recall, Pirates had a little bit of a fall off. Or a substantial fall off if you're a Pirates fan. Maybe it's a little more of a soft spot for you. But some takeaways that I did come across in my just digging around again, all of the storylines from this weekend. Looking specifically at the Pirates, I came across this stat that said the Pirates went 3-9 in extra innings a year ago. So again, take the 4-0 start with a grain of salt, but and take this nugget as well with a grain of salt. But it's still an encouraging takeaway. They went 3-9 in extra innings last year, which was the 4th worst record among all teams last year. This year they're already 2-0, so they're already finding ways to win late, and they're doing it against, again, a 2023 playoff team. And say what you will about the Miami Marlins, facts are facts. 2023 playoff team. Regarding the Pirates' 4-0 start, it's the fourth time they've started this well in the past 40 years, and the first time the club has started the season with a 4-game road series sweep since 1903. So, good on the Pirates. As you know, on this podcast, I have a little bit of a Pirates jingle queued up. I'm not gonna unleash that on you this early in the season, but look, man, if they keep it up, if they get hot, I mean, they're already hot right out of the gate. But if they heat up a little bit more, they extend this. Maybe they extend this winning streak, or they just have a run of games where they're pushing last year's start again, 20-8. If they, I'll say right now, if they start off that well, you can bet that I'm breaking out that Pirates music. So again, props to the Bucks, man. That's just one of the many storylines, takeaways from this season, or opening weekend, I should say, not the season. Opening weekend that I think is just refreshing, because again, as you know, as we kind of saw last year, the Pirates were a good feel-good story, but it tapered off real quick. But it's just encouraging to see that, they bounce back, they start off the way they do, and they position themselves to possibly be more than a feel-good story this year. There are some people that have them in the postseason. I won't say who, but there are people that have the Pirates in the postseason, not myself. But time will tell. We shall see. A team that I think we all have in the postseason, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Before the season even started, which I don't think we've had a chance to run through this, but at this point, it's kind of old news. But the Will Smith extension, the Dodgers extending him to a 10-year, $140 million extension. Look, there's a lot of news thrown out by Padres fans, ironically, criticizing the Dodgers for extending somebody into their late 30s, which this contract would run him through 2033, which would be his age 38 season. A lot of noise coming from Padres fans talking about, what happened to giving us a hard time about extending guys into our late 30s. The difference is they're not spending $300+ million on this guy. They're getting Will Smith, one of the game's best catchers, at a clip of 10 years for $140 million. That's a steal, a bargain. I don't know what the going rate for all-star caliber catchers is, but that sounds pretty good to me. And if you have to bite it a little bit at the end of that contract and say, hey, thanks for your service, maybe there's another role for him to slot into at that stage of his career. I highly doubt he's going to be catching at age 38. You got a guy that's he's proven himself. He's 29. He literally just turned 29. He's proven himself as a necessary and pivotal piece to this lineup. As star-studded as this lineup is, I don't know if it goes the same way or at the same rate without Will Smith behind the dish as the engine, because we all know you can have an MVP in right field, you can have an MVP at shortstop, you can have an MVP at third base. You need somebody to be able to steer the ship from behind the dish. So I'm glad they did this. I think it was long overdue. I know Dodgers fans and even Dodgers players, I believe, were clamoring for this. So good for Will to get that extension. But talking about other guys around the diamond for the Dodgers, Bobby Miller. I want to give some props to Bobby Miller, a guy who coming into the season, I think the expectations, the hopes for Bobby Miller were raised, and rightfully so. He's shown you what he's capable of, but can he put it together over the course of 162? I would say he started off well in that regard. Friday night, went 6 deep, only allowed 2 hits, and racked up 11 Ks. No runs. So props to Bobby Miller for quite an outing. One of a few pitchers. I mean, I already mentioned Corbin Burnes, Grayson Rodriguez had an outing, but there were some very, very impressive starts across rotations around the league this weekend. So that was encouraging to see, because you always hear about spring training and who it's really for and who really benefits from the early start, whether it's hitters or pitchers, who needs more time. So it's encouraging to see hitters around the league and pitchers alike, not everybody, but a fair amount, having the strong starts that they have. It's very encouraging to see. And I'm sure fans of these teams that employ these players are thrilled. But I'll just say, like, generally as a baseball fan, it's fun to see a guy like Bobby Miller go out and dice like that. That's good baseball. I know people are rooting for the Dodgers specifically for their downfall, but like, I just want to have more names that can be appointment television throughout the course of an entire season, because as we know, it gets slow, it gets dry, it gets real slow there. Like in the middle, there's a couple lulls throughout there. So if I got a guy like Bobby Miller, who in years past it was Clayton Kershaw, if I've got a guy like Bobby Miller, Tyler Glasnow, Grayson Rodriguez, just names like that, who are, getting to where we hoped they would be at this point in time, that's good for baseball. I don't care if you hate the Dodgers, if you love the Dodgers, or any other team for that matter that's got a guy like this. It's good for baseball, and you should be rooting for that. So again, props to Bobby Miller. Mookie Betts, though. Let's talk about Mookie Betts. And I apologize to Mookie Betts for getting this late in the episode before we really brought him up. But my goodness. And I'm going to talk about him because he's on my fantasy squad. And he's also, if you recall, if you haven't listened to the Hot Takes and Predictions episode, give you a little bit of a preview here. First of all, why haven't you? Second of all, you need to do that like now, as we're still only a few games into the season. You still got time to get caught up and understand what we're all about this year in 2024. Because look, we're going to be referencing that episode and the predictions we made in that episode all year long. So just a little plug here for the Hot Takes and Predictions episode. If you haven't listened to it, do it now. Finish this episode and then to go do it. So cue it up. Mookie Betts, my 2024 MVP pick. And just as a little spoiler, again, for those of you who haven't listened to the Hot Takes and Predictions episode, I also said that he was going to transition to shortstop and win a Gold Glove. And I mean, the guy is playing at an elite level right now on both sides of the ball. And I think he had like a little bit of a, was it a throwing error? Maybe on Thursday or Saturday. I can't remember. But that aside, playing phenomenal baseball. He homered. I don't believe he homered tonight. Sunday Night Baseball against the Cardinals. But entering Sunday Night Baseball, he had homered in 4 straight games. Shout out to Xavier Scruggs. He tweeted, he said Mookie Betts is the first player with an OPS above 2,000 and 10 plus RBIs over his first 5 games of a season. Remember, Dodgers Padres played 2 in Korea, so he had a little bit of I'll say a head start to the season. So he, through first 5 games of the season, the first to do that. Again, first player with OPS above 2,000 and 10 plus RBIs over his first 5 games of a season since Barry Bonds in 2002. If you know anything about baseball, you know anything about Barry Bonds, that's probably the best company that you can have from a statistical standpoint. Forget the storylines and narratives around Barry Bonds. Statistically, that's good company. And I think we can safely assume Mookie Betts is free and clear of any substances in that regard. So just know he's probably doing it. He's probably doing it clean. Okay. So, clap it up for Mookie Betts. Opta Stats also going going with another nugget here. Opta Stats tweeted, since RBI became official, only two major league players have had a 4-game span with 9+ hits, 9 RBI, 6 walks, 4 home runs, and a 600+ batting average. One is Mookie Betts, and of course, this was entering Sunday Night Baseball, so this was prior to Sunday's game. The other, Babe Ruth. So when I say he's playing at an elite clip, that's not hyperbole. That's not like I'm not blowing that out of proportion. He's legitimately, I know the Dodgers are what now? Did they play a 4-game series against the Cardinals? 3-game? Either way, like 5-6 games in. I know it's early. There's not a hotter hitter on the planet right now than Mookie Betts, and just player in general. I think I saw, let me pull this up. I don't know how accurate it is at this point. But I believe, let me see here. Yes, at Yankee World on Twitter, he says, he tweeted, Mookie Betts is leading the league in every hitting stat imaginable while also being first in defensive run saves as a shortstop. So he tweeted this out 12 hours ago. So prior to Sunday Night Baseball, he had 3 defensive runs saved as a shortstop. And as I mentioned, it's just lighting the world on fire from the plate at the dish offensively. So it's incredible to see him starting off this year the way he is, with the pressures, I think, that are inherent with this 2024 Dodgers team coming into the season. And not to mention, he's got the sound bite of saying, every team that, or I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying like, it's going to be every team that plays us World Series whenever they take on the Dodgers. And look, man, he's not wrong. I'm not going to go out and say they're going to win 140 games, but like, the reality is, this is, on paper at least, this is the team to beat. And we all know that it doesn't necessarily ever really pan out the way it should on that paper says it should, because baseball doesn't work that way. And I said it myself, you're a fool to think that this Dodgers team is just going to cakewalk to the World Series. That's just not how baseball works. It's never that easy. But again, on paper, in the early going here with star power, the Dodgers have the target on their back. And so for him to come out and kind of, walk the walk a little bit, I gotta show love to my man Mooks, man. He's doing the thing. And a position change should not be laughed at. You shouldn't be turning your nose up at that, because that's a huge deal. And I understand he came up as an infielder in the minor leagues. I get that. In the Red Sox system, I understand that. But doing your thing out in the outfield for as long as he has been over the last number of years, to then transition back, you may as well be starting from scratch. I mean, yeah, like I said, you come up in the system as a minor leaguer or as an infielder, but like you lose that if you're not taking those reps every day. That you get a little rusty in that regard. So for him to have the spring that he did in terms of shaking that rust off, and to be able to catapult into this start, that's awesome. I'm a big fan of that. And again, as somebody who chose Mookie Betts as a National League MVP, I'm pretty thrilled about that. So props to Mookie. And one other guy that I don't even think I've mentioned, Tyler O'Neill, kind of under the radar. I mean, I knew about it obviously as a Sox guy, and I saw the historical graphic come up indicating the news. But for those who don't know, Tyler O'Neill set the opening day home run record with 5. So he's homered in 5 straight opening days. He had a solo homer in, I believe it was like the 8th. Yeah, top of the 8th. Has become the first AL NL player to go deep in 5 straight opening days. Per the Elias Sports Bureau, O'Neill entered the day tied with Todd Hundley and a pair of Hall of Famers, Gary Carter, Yogi Berra, with 4. So, like, I mean, all things considered, it's not like a huge deal, but like at the end of the day, it's just a home. It was a solo shot, but like that's again one of those cool storylines from either a player or a team that you can come away from opening weekend and go, like that's pretty cool. Like we've been hearing about and I know I just got done talking about the Dodgers for however long, but like we've been hearing about the Dodgers all off season, and then you hear about the whole gambling scandal, and it's like, okay, I want to hear some new things. I want to hear some maybe under the radar storylines. The Pirates going 4-0, for example. Tyler O'Neill setting the opening day home run record. Stuff like that is what we love to see. And not to, again, you need to hear me. I need to reiterate this. There was so much that happened this weekend. And I know as we kind of wrap it up here that I'm not going to be able to get to it. I didn't get to it all. But not to go left unmentioned. What's his name? Martini, I think it is, for the Reds, had a couple bops on opening day. So, and I mentioned Tatis and Teoscar. They've had some fireworks to start the season among other names. It's cool to see, man. It's cool to see some names like a Tyler O'Neill or a Martini. Those are the kind of storylines that should be of interest to the casual and even diehard baseball fan who are looking for something outside of LA or what have you. So, honestly, I think that's all I really had. Again, I know there was a lot, and I do apologize if I didn't get to everything, but I feel like we covered a good bit. Let me just run through here, see if there's anything I missed. Rangers get there. That was a little side note. That was funny. You had Jordan Montgomery, right? Was he at the park at that point, or were they still trying to get him there, or is he elsewhere? Did I see correctly that he was with the D-backs at home when they got there? How did that work? Were they playing the Rangers? I honestly can't even remember what that matchup was. But anyway, it was like, no, they weren't playing. So it was Jordan Montgomery, obviously reigning World Series champion, watching the Diamondbacks, his new team, get their National League champion rings. That's just a little baseball humor. That's a lot of stuff like that kind of flies under the radar, but that's worth a good chuckle. I'm trying to think. Was there anything else that I missed? We covered the Rhys Mets little incident, talked some big names, mentioned I think I mentioned the Reds had a walk-off today to kind of cap their weekend series against the Nationals. Mentioned Mookie. I think I covered most of the big storylines. There was a lot to take away. And look, a lot of teams, a lot of players laying good foundations, I think, for the rest of the way. I know it's early, but we're seeing a lot of exciting stuff. You're seeing some of these storylines be laid out to be they're developing. I think you're going to see maybe some, I mentioned it earlier, some rivalries. I don't know what's to come of those based on some of these bench clearing incidents. But you're getting some good sound bites out there. I mean, you're all on social media. You see these quote graphics flying around and these post game locker room videos flying around there. I think we're gearing up for another good season of baseball, man. Like look, as a Sox guy, You know how I feel. I've made it clear on here how I feel about this season, what I'm really expecting, what I'm hoping for this season. But I couldn't help opening day, man. I'm like, it never fails. It never fails. You get so down all off. Like if you're a fan of a team that's out of the hunt, like typically on opening day, you're just like, we have nothing to really pull for here this year. Somehow opening day never fails to infuse that little sense of hope where you're like, this could be the year. This could be the year we finally turn things around. And even if you get swept, opening day is a beautiful day. And so opening day, man, I was loving it. I was loving engaging with a lot of you all, talking about just what was happening to start the season, to get these games underway. I even implemented my own. If some of you, if you follow me on Twitter, which if you don't, hit me up on Twitter with a follow. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm like sort of entertaining. I'm not all that entertaining, but you know, I like having some folks to talk to, and I'll hit you back with a follow if you hit me up. But I mentioned, I put out a tweet opening day. I said, I think I've decided to implement a new tradition, and credit to some of you guys. I don't have specific names, but I've seen a couple baseball fans around social media do this as well. And that's kind of where I got the idea from. But I'm gonna use opening day as an excuse every year now to get a new hat. And so I started that tradition this year. Got a new hat. It should be in on Monday. So I'm excited about that. Shout out 47 brand. You all know how to make a quality product. No, I'm not getting paid to say that, but in a world where we're complaining about Nike and Fanatics and Major League Baseball and the product that they're putting out on the field in terms of these uniforms, 47 brand makes a quality hat. So just wanted to give some love to them. But yeah, man, it was a fun weekend. There was a lot of baseball to watch. You know, I tuned in for a lot of games I wasn't even really a fan of. Like I mentioned, I really wanted to watch the O's to get the season started again, as they had the first game on Thursday. Caught some of their games throughout the weekend. I caught the Braves Phillies series this weekend. Just a lot of exciting baseball right out of the gate. And again, already mentioned it, but some of these teams, we had exciting baseball to watch, and we had some new and exciting teams to maybe shed some light on. So that's always good for baseball. But all in all, a great opening weekend, and I'm glad to have been able to take in as much baseball as I did. I'm sure you all did as well. But don't give up on the rest of the league. Like, I know it's you get swept up in the excitement of all of Major League Baseball getting the season started, and then you kind of settle into your favorite team's rhythm. I understand that, and I'm not going to fault you for that. I'm all about that. I think it's good to be a diehard fan. I'm not sitting here saying you should be like a fair weather fan of some other teams or like a little bandwagon action, but we say it on here all the time. Don't give up on the rest of the league as the season gets underway. Stay locked in. If you got MLB TV, stay locked in to some of these teams, some of these players that are going to be exciting to watch and exciting to follow throughout the season. Because if you don't, you're going to miss. Like, it's one thing to catch up on highlights or to listen to us for like a rundown of what happened. And I know season's long. There's a lot to keep up with, but it's a completely different thing when you're following along. You pick out a couple players and you track them throughout the year, and you tune into their games and you see these things happen in real time as they happen. And you can be like, man, I was watching that. I saw that. I saw that no hitter. I saw that milestone home run because I was tuned in and I was paying attention to the entire sport of baseball as a whole because I'm a baseball fan. I would encourage you to do that this year if you haven't before. It's a fun experience, and if you're, like I said, if you're a fan of a team that doesn't have much hope for 2024, I'm not saying to jump ship somewhere else, but just have something, in your back pocket that you can go, hey, the fill in the blank team is on. Let me check them out, see what's going on there. It's a good way to keep you. It's a helpful way to keep you sane over the course of 162. So I'll leave you with that. I appreciate you all listening to me talk to myself for an hour. Nate, I believe, should maybe, I think he said he might have one more episode in him before the honeymoon kicks off. So I know he and Paige have that to look forward to. But at some point we'll get Nate back. I'm gonna mix Ryan in, Ryan Ripken, for those of you who are unfamiliar. He'll be back. He'll be a recurring guest throughout the season, especially in this early going, as Nate will most likely be MIA for a little bit. So again, my best wishes to Nate and Paige. Happy for you guys. Love you guys. But again, thank you all for listening to me talk to myself for over an hour. A lot of good baseball this weekend. And I wish you and your team, minus like the Yankee fans out there and like some others, the best of luck in 2024. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope the excitement continues. I hope the surprises continue to roll in for your team. Good surprises, of course. And I just hope that you continue to fall in love with this great game. So with that said, my friends, I love you all. And as always, looking forward to talking more baseball with you guys soon. Until next time, stay filthy.